it's on YouTube if you want to watch it. Next time one of these DVD players scratches my DVD, they're going to get a bill from me, because every time I played an office video for my institutions class, started skipping. I mean, my gosh, this stuff. So, not to mention there's about 3 inches of dust down in the back of that. So anyway, what happens when you pay cleaning people minimum wage? They do a minimum job. Why would you? Tell me what. Somebody paid you $7 an hour. You're going to stick your hand behind some disgusting toilet to get some dirt. Yeah, I don't think so. Anyway, and all you need to do is extrapolate to what McDonald's employees are willing to do, or unwilling to do, like wash their hands, or to refuse to come in when they have a raging flu. Which you don't get sick days at McDonald's. I know that. I had to come in with strep throat and all kinds of things. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's it.
What did you want me to do? Get fired? They were going to fire me. What do you want me to do?
Sneeze on a burger and then leave.
Maybe. Too bad you weren't working at the time. You could have given me the advice. So anyway. All right. Now, there's a few things, though, before we get started. First, I will get you your... the first take-home test. Hopefully by this weekend I'll have it done, but I got a lot of work done. If not, hopefully by Monday at the latest, Monday evening at the latest. In addition, I put 2 things up on Blackboard that you need to look over. One is a reading on elite deviance, and it's just a short, I think it's about 7 pages. We'll talk about part of it today. I also put a slideshow up there on combining the concepts of elite deviance, which is this concept that people at the head of large, powerful institutions, when they engage in a corrupt behavior or criminal or deviant behavior, that it has a much more damaging, detrimental effect on society. Bernie Madoff stealing from people is way worse than some homeless person taking $5 off of somebody. It ripples through the structure, not only with the people who Bernie Madoff took their money, but then undermines the confidence people might have in the system, as well as what we call extreme deviance, which is things like instead of just killing somebody out of revenge or rage, or just because you were angry at the time and you weren't aware of what you're doing, extreme deviance usually talks to premeditated, much larger forms of deviance where you damage much larger amounts of people, or do things like, for example, the Exxon Valdez oil spill is a form of, on some levels, of extreme deviance. Extreme deviance usually talks about things like genocide or serial rape or serial murder. So we're going to combine these 2 concepts into what we call extreme elite deviance, and we're looking at how that was magnified through the state of Germany and through the individual of Hitler, and how it rippled through the entire social structure of Europe. Hitler's not the only one who engaged in extreme elite deviance. Most people who have this these acts committed to them or against them don't survive to tell the tales. Genghis Khan wiped people off the face of the earth. Alexander the Great burnt cities to the ground just because people said, "Hey, do it." Okay, I mean, these were not nice people. Even things like the Reign of Terror in France. This is a form of extreme deviance. And we'll talk about also how Hitler's narcissistic personality disorder attracted him and attracted others that had similar characteristics in their personality, things like racism and total war, and concepts that eventually would become cornerstones of how Hitler behaved. Believe it or not, at first, other than attacking certain undesirable people that he labeled as undesirable, Hitler did not deliberately attack civilians until mostly the Battle of Britain. But again, when he came into France, he didn't line people up, or at least not most people, up against the wall and kill them. Believe it or not, it was actually World War I is really the time when, or at least forms of total war start to come into being. But really, the total war was initiated on both sides, and those of you who understand the history of World War II, the Allies are the ones who really started this stuff about bombing civilians, about actively targeting women and children. The United States had military, and Harry Truman had absolutely no qualms about bombing Nagasaki and Hiroshima. No problem whatsoever about that. And those were civilian targets. Those were not military targets. They didn't bomb military bases. Unfortunately, this is exactly the same tactic that terrorists use. Terrorists use a form of limited total war. I know that sounds silly, but they attack civilians to inflict the maximum amount of damage and casualties and to scare the hell out of people. Al-Qaeda didn't run airplanes into those buildings at 4 o'clock in the morning when nobody was there. And they didn't run into the Statue of Liberty just to make a symbolic statement. They went in at 9:30 in the morning with the idea of creating maximum amount of damage. Same thing in 1993. They actually wanted to knock one of the buildings over into the other one and knock them both down. With the Pentagon, it was a bit of symbolic damage as well as physical damage. But I think it's unfortunate that people don't realize that the U.S. military has been using elements of total war for quite a while, and the rest of the world does not like this kind of stuff. For example, in Iraq, we were using spent uranium and radioactive bullets that are low-level radioactivity, but it was contaminating the environment. And if you didn't die from the bullet wound, you most likely died from poisoning. Okay. So anyway, so we'll talk about that in the slideshow. The slideshow's up on Blackboard, and then if we have time left over, we're going to start another documentary about looking at the effects of having a narcissist who engages in these behaviors or believes in things like racism. What are the ramifications of extreme elite deviance? And one of them is the final solution. And we'll talk about how Hitler constructed the ideas behind the final solution, how he implemented the plans, how other people helped him. It wasn't just Germany doing this. The French had no love lost for Jewish people, and neither did the Dutch, and they sent them all off to camps, partly to save their ass. And in Germany, for the longest time at least, you didn't bother. First of all, if you complained about the Nazi regime, here's your tombstone. And then secondarily, most Germans were somewhat anti-Semitic anyway, and so they went right along with what Hitler said. But the thing was, Hitler didn't just go after Jewish people. He went after gypsies, or he went after Catholics, he went after social democrats, he went after communists, he went after atheists, he went after people he just didn't like, political enemies, anybody who challenged him. So, for most part in Germany, when the Jewish people started to be taken away, and anybody who thinks that people didn't know what was going on, I got a bridge you can buy in Brooklyn, dirt cheap, and some beachfront property in Antarctica you could buy too. Germans knew. Most of them didn't care, and some of them were like good riddance. Finally, many German people looked at Jewish people, going, you know what? First of all, you were involved in the Treaty of Versailles, which it's hard to prove whether or not that was true, and there's certainly no proof that there was a conspiracy. And then also, when Germany was going through the 2 depressions, German people looked at Jewish people, and there was only 500,000 of them in Germany. But you didn't do anything. And I would say to them, well, neither did your government. And neither did the army. And neither did your other neighbors. And the thing was, during the days of the final solution and people being hauled off, unless it was you that got hauled off, you chose usually not to say anything. If you've ever heard that famous poem, I think it was a priest or somebody who wrote it. He said, they came for the Jews and I didn't say anything. And then he came for the gypsies, and I didn't say anything because I wasn't a gypsy. It goes on and on like this. And then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak up. And look, and the ramifications. Germany thought they had a bad go of it after World War I. That was nothing compared to what occurred after World War II. The only thing that helped the Germans, in the West at least, was the United States came in. And the Germans hadn't done the things to the U.S. Army and the U.S. people that they'd done to Great Britain, France, and particularly the Soviet Union. And I think the United States inherently knew, just as they treated Japan, that if we treat these people like dirt and push them down and never give them a chance to rise back up economically, then we're going to have even a bigger problem in 10 years or 20 years. That if you want to avoid the sore winner syndrome. Now, unfortunately, the United States didn't seem to learn this lesson after the Cold War and did engage in this sore winner attitude and shoved every failure up in the face of the former Soviet republics. And Russia felt isolated and tried to pressure China to hey, your buddy Soviet Union is gone, and look how great we are, and we're going to spread capitalism everywhere, no matter how appropriate or inappropriate it is for certain economies. Some people say that the United States abused its position of power as the only superpower during the 1990s, and then eventually, we had to get engaged back into the war on terror. And again, and I think most people don't understand that your United States military and the CIA was not inactive during the 1990s. They were doing things in your name with your money that was total war-like stuff, overthrowing leaders, bombing Belgrade without really any real permission on some levels. You know, and the military does this all the time. So anyway, we'll talk about all these things as well. We'll focus mainly on Hitler and the Nazis, but I think it's instructive to understand that one of the reasons why we're talking about this example is this occurred before there was Hitler, it has occurred after there was Hitler, and it will occur in the future too. Let's hope to God somebody like this does not ever get into power in the United States, because the United States has at least 7,500 nuclear warheads, most of them multiply targeted independent re-entry vehicles, which means that one missile can destroy 5 to 10 different cities at once. And the next World War will not last more than 8 minutes? I just don't think that people are reasonable enough, and I'll tell you right now, I think it's Pakistan and India are the ones that concern me the most. People say Iran and Israel, and those are real close to the neighborhood. India and Pakistan have every reason in the world to hate each other. And they're essentially engaged in active warfare right now over the Kashmir region. And if you guys remember that Mumbai attack, I don't think India is really too happy about the fact that those people have not been brought to justice, any of them. So, again, and I don't think the United States is too keen on Pakistan hiding bin Laden for 10 years either. And if you think the Pakistanis didn't know, again, I got a bridge to sell. Anybody want to talk about that? I got this thing repels sharks. You see any sharks around? Anyway, it also repels alligators and tigers.
And the whole atmosphere grew more and more hysterical. He was interrupted nearly after every phrase by big applause, and women began screaming. It was like a mass religious ceremony. And well, I listened to his speech, and I feel that more and more excited atmosphere in the hall. And for some seconds, again and again, I had a feeling, what a pity that I can't share that belief of all those thousands of people, that I'm alone, that I'm contrary to all that. It was very funny. I thought, well, he's talking all the nonsense I know, the nonsense he always talked, but still, I feel it must be wonderful just to jump into that bubbling pot and be a member of all those who are believers.
One lady in our village, she went to Berlin to a birthday reception for Adolf Hitler, and she came back and told us the Führer shook hands with me, and from this time on she was like a saint in our village.
Remember, for the longest time in Europe, leaders were considered to be ruling by divine right, like they were godlike figures. Like Charlemagne, King Henry, 14 million King Henry.
Hitler's home life took place on a ledge in Bavaria, at Berchtesgaden. These pictures are from the home movies of Eva Braun, the discreet young woman who stayed with him till his death. To the Berghof for tea and tactics came the elect, some a little ill at ease, some genuinely intimate.
We already watched this?
Adolf Hitler, the Lieblingsblume.
Fast forward. I don't think you need to hear bad German music, man.
On formal occasions, the SS Guard turned out. They were the reality of the great tyranny centered in distant Berlin. Their hands, soon to be red with the blood of millions. For that reality, Hitler would leave his chintz chair, his tea parties, and his mistress. The car was waiting at the foot of the steps.
Whom he never kissed in public, ever.
If Germany was to be strong again, Germany must rearm. The people frightened by war had to become once more familiar with arms. To touch them. To play at soldiers.
This is about where we left.
Germany had to train pilots. Versailles forbade Germany an air force, so the League for Air Sports used gliders to train men still officially civilians for the future Luftwaffe. And the army began to swell beyond the limits set by Versailles from the moment Hitler became Chancellor. In secret, it trebled its strength in 2 years. Any foreign military attaché could see what was happening. But the world did nothing decisive, and in March 1935, Germany announced conscription, a peacetime army of 500,000 men.
And remember in the book he was signing peace agreements with France and Poland and all these places, talking peace. The French were rearming, and he gave that as an excuse. They were rearming because of things he did.
The first Luftwaffe squadrons flew past. The new German Navy was underway. Hitler kept Europe bewildered. Proclaiming Versailles extinct, he proposed a limit on armaments. Britain, the first democracy to make a pact with the Nazis, signed a naval agreement. Hitler was reassured. It might be safe to start tampering with the hated frontiers. One part of Versailles had already been undone. In January 1935, the territory of the Saar, the little coal mining region which had been German before 1918, voted overwhelmingly and under international supervision to return to Germany. Next door, the Rhineland remained a demilitarized zone. Beyond dispute, this was part of Germany, but to recover it would directly challenge the Allies, and above all, France. The troops rode over the Rhine bridges at dawn on March the 7th, 1936. Secretly, the commanders were ready to bolt back across the river if France showed any sign of fight. But there was none. The Rhineland city of Cologne and all Germany went wild with relief and delight. A part of German honor had been recovered. Hitler had taken a chance and won. 2 years later, Austria, Hitler's birthplace, lay
The last
right.
thing you want to do is reward a narcissist for
Austrian
acting
Nazis were
narcissistic.
rioting for Anschluss, union with Germany. To prevent a plebiscite on independence, Hitler marched in.
And it wasn't that, if you read from the book, it wasn't that simple. Right? Italy threatened actually to invade Austria to prevent
German troops were greeted by hysterical
Taking over.
crowds. Vienna suffered a Jew-baiting terror which even Germany had not yet seen. Austria became a province. Germany's neighbors, appalled, uncertain, unprepared, once again did nothing. Czechoslovakia was no lost German province, but an independent nation, allied to Britain, France, and the Soviet Union. Within its northern border lived the Sudeten Germans. Hitler incited this minority, which had never been part of Germany, to demand union with the Reich. Europe prepared for war. But though Czechoslovakia was ready to fight, Britain and France gave way. At Munich in September 1938, Chamberlain for Britain, Italy's Mussolini, Daladier for France, signed with Hitler the treaty which stripped Czechoslovakia of the Sudetenland and left her broken and abandoned. The Germans crossed the border, welcomed as liberators by the Sudeten population. At home, the German generals who opposed Hitler, hoping that a rebuff over Czechoslovakia would fatally injure his prestige, gave up their plots in despair.
One of the benefits to this was it allowed Hitler to have a larger base with which to draw from soldiers. And then he could also wipe out any Jewish people or Slavs, which he couldn't stand either, which he'd learned to hate by living in Vienna. He thought they were animals. They were less
Hitler
than
sat
human.
with his troops in the field.
And they were Bolsheviks on top of that, which bothered him.
The Sudetenland was easily digested. The next course could be taken fast. The shrunken Czech lands and Slovakia lay helpless before him. He struck on March the 15th, 1939. The German troops reached Prague the same day. There was no resistance. The last democracy in Central Europe was wiped out. The Czechs would never trust the West again.
Again, this was in
The West
74. They
trusted
trusted us
Hitler
after
no more.
1991.
And realized at last that only force would stop it.
No friends of Russia, I tell you that right now. Just like Ukraine. They don't want anything to do with Russia. They've had it.
Berlin, more cheers, more worship. Yet what was in the minds of those who cheered?
And remember, with each
Very
additional
few
step,
wanted wars of
when
conflict
Hitler moved his
or hope
ideas
like
from
Hitler,
fantasy to
the
reality,
German Empire
and
from
succeeded,
the Urals to the Atlantic.
he started to believe his own crap.
Most thought
Maybe I
they
am
were
the
taking
Messiah.
back what had been
Look at what I
robbed
did.
from them and restoring, not destroying, the order and unity of Europe. For these crowds,
Sorry, I just want to check this. Are you watching Google? What's your site? This is you, Sergey Brin. This is you, dude. Frozen. Maybe Facebook should run YouTube. Well, in a year, this thing wants to decide to work. We'll finish this up.
for these crowds, it seemed that Hitler's statesmanship could never fail. Others who stayed at home that night feared a war was coming which might destroy Germany itself. But now they saw no hope for a rising against Hitler. They were left with the moral question: should one resist a tyranny without hope of success?
Well, I think it's difficult, first of all, to make up your mind that you should do something against a government. This is very rare, first of all. Secondly, if it is extremely dangerous, as it is in a dictatorship, it's even more complicated, because everybody likes his own life.
I think everything that came to us when we were living in Germany came very gradually.
She's British. She
That
married
was
her.
part, perhaps, of the way Hitler managed these things. It came on us rather drip by drip, rather like an anesthetic, one could almost say. And it was only when a specific thing that he did hit you personally that you actually realized that what was going on. In my particular case, I think I could say that it hit me personally when the Jewish doctor of my children, whom I'd always had, came. He was a very busy man, but he seemed to be having always more time to spare. And I remember one night he came and spent the night looking after my very sick child. And in the morning, the child was better, and when he left, he asked me, did I still want him to look after my children? And I was tired, and I said, well, for goodness sakes, why not? And he told me that his clinic, his children's clinic, which he had started in Hamburg, he was going to be dismissed, and that he'd had threatening letters that if he laid his hands on Aryan children, he was in for trouble.
In November 1938, a Jew shot a German diplomat in Paris. The Nazi leaders organized a reprisal. Synagogues were burned and Jewish shops looted all over Germany. On that crystal night, named for the smashed glass sparkling in the gutters, thousands of Jews were thrown into concentration camps.
Eine schreckliche Nacht. Wollt ihr wissen, wie diese Nacht war?
Do you want to know how the night was? If you want to know, I will tell you. We were all shoved together, beaten and punched, and made to stand in ranks and be counted and so on. Because I'd been a soldier, I didn't find that so very difficult. But the others who didn't fall in properly,
That's points off.
they were beaten right away.
Okay.
And the most terrible thing was when somebody grabbed hold of a big strong man. He said, "Don't grab me." "What? I shouldn't grab you?" And he hit him.
Sofort von 3 Leuten, SS-Leuten.
And this man was immediately overpowered by 3 people, SS people.
Festgeschnallt.
A block was brought. He was tied down to it, and the camp commander said, "The Jew Israel, or the Jew Idzik," I can't remember exactly now, is sentenced to 25 lashes.
Stockhieben verurteilt. Dann kam eine riesige...
Then a huge man came, an SS man with a huge horsewhip, and started to beat him.
Der Mann
The
stöhnte.
man just groaned a bit at first, but then he shouted, "Stop, stop." The commander said, "What do you mean, stop? We'll start all over again, from the beginning." But after 3 more lashes, the blood was spurting. Then he stopped and salt was rubbed into the wounds, or pepper, I can't remember. The man was dragged away. We never saw him again.
Wir haben ihn nie wieder gesehen.
Of course, in 1938, when the synagogues were burning, everybody knew what was going on. I remember that my brother-in-law, the husband of my sister Lene, was October, when he went in the morning after the day of the Kristallnacht, Reichskristallnacht, Crystal Night, or how you say. He went by train to his office downtown, and between the stations of Samihiplatz and Zoological Garden there is the Jewish synagogue, yeah, and he saw that it was burning, yeah, and he murmured, "Kulturschande." Yeah, that is the insult for culture, shame to our culture. Well, right away, a gentleman in front of him turned his rear and showed his Parteiabzeichen, party badge, yeah, and took out his papers, that he was a man of the Gestapo. And he had to show his papers, to give his address, and was ordered to come to the party office next morning, 9 o'clock.
April 1939. The Wehrmacht prepares to celebrate Hitler's 50th birthday. They hope for the usual Führer weather, a fine day. The Führer drives through Berlin, under the Brandenburg Gate and down the Siegersallee, the Avenue of Victories. The army lining his route has increased sevenfold in just 4 years. Among the Wehrmacht's 51 divisions, the new Panzer units, the instrument of Blitzkrieg. In spite of appearances, the High Command is by no means sure that this army is fit for war yet. Hitler is ready to overrule them. The word in every diplomatic conversation that summer was Danzig. The free city, with its mixed German-Polish population, had been separated from Germany and made the responsibility of a League of Nations commissioner. Danzig and East Prussia were now sundered from the Reich by a strip of Polish territory, the corridor. Hitler was demanding the return of Danzig and free access to East Prussia across the corridor. Poland refused. In March 1939, Britain and France guaranteed her frontiers. In August, Britain promised to fight if Poland was attacked. Once again, myths about the persecution of a German minority were used to build up a case for armed intervention. German refugees told piteous tales of Polish brutality. Nazi propaganda filmed them greedily for the cinema newsreels throughout July and August. Hitler's plan was to wipe Poland off the map. But this might mean war with Soviet Russia, and he was not ready for that. His foreign minister, Ribbentrop, flew to Moscow on August the 23rd to sign the Nazi-Soviet pact. Poland's fate was sealed. The new alliance stunned the unsuspecting West. Germany gloated.
Der Paktabschluss hat die Einkreisungspolitiker empfindlich getroffen. Außenminister Lord Halifax erklärte.
You will have read the report about the agreement reached between Russia and Germany, which has surprised the world. The life of all nations depends in the last resort on the mutual respect for one another's rights, and reasonable confidence that they can each live their life in their own way. I would earnestly hope.
Sehr richtig, Herr Halifax. Auch das deutsche Volk will sein Leben auf seine eigene Art leben können.
which cannot be retraced, reason may yet prevail.
The German newsreels tried to show Britain distracted, still uncertain.
Ministerpräsident Chamberlain verlässt Downing Street.
You know the truth? There were a lot of people in Britain who wanted to join Germany. Felt exactly the way he did about other people who were racist.
Das Unrecht von Versailles zu verewigen.
Now, British people were never racist, right?
One young German left England for home.
That's why they took over a third of the world.
I had
Because they had respect for
whom I
them.
wanted to marry, and I
Indians.
said to myself, well, I'll dare go home. When I came to Cologne, I read the first German newspapers. And I knew at once there was great danger of a war. Now, the tone of the German press was absolutely hysterical. And I thought, what a fool I was. I had just gone home that moment.
All over Europe, the reservists got their telegrams. In the last hours of peace, the soldiers put on uniform with a tired grin.
That sealed the fate of about 70 million people right there. And on some levels, you could make the argument that the living envy the dead. Because to live through such a horror show, if you ever get the chance to talk to a Holocaust survivor, why don't you ask, I mean, they probably won't want, many of them don't want to talk about this stuff. But the things they saw could fill up, you know, a book 10,000 pages long of horrors that they had seen and family members they'd lost. And witnessed to unbelievably horrible crimes and dead bodies upon dead body and having all their dreams for their life, a normal life, destroyed. There were no peaceful Saturday afternoons in Germany after this. At least after once they started getting attacked. Okay, the first couple years of the war when the Germans were making a lot of headway, it actually in Germany was like a war was not even going on. Until the British and then eventually the Americans and the Soviets started to bomb and then eventually tried to invade. Okay. Sorry there was a little bit of an overlap there, but I think still it's good to get these things, even if, especially since many of you probably don't remember what were some of the things in the film because you only see it once. It's good to go over these things. Begin with this stuff. All right, now for Monday, I'm going to show you this PDF, and I want you to read over it. It's very short. In addition to the reading you're going to do, you don't have to read every single word of it because we're going to go over part of it today. But I wanted to give you the original reference material so that you can have it. Oops, that's the wrong one. I don't know why this thing's acting this way. I'm glad I got it on camera so people can witness. Computers don't. There's some things that make life easier. The rest of the time, it just makes life into a nightmare. I got 15 different stupid emails I got to contact every day. And let me tell you something. It used to be, if someone wanted to steal money from you, they'd point a gun at you and take it. Now they can just steal your entire identity with a push of a button. Yeah, that's a better world. You can molest your children from over the TV or the computer screen. I mean, my gosh. It was very hard for children to get a hold of porn and other types of cigarettes and that stuff. You could order alcohol online. You have tequila sent to your house. Or salvia, whatever people are. All right. So here's the reading. I'll put it up here. This is the first page. It basically is just a quick definition of what elite deviance is. Let me minimize it so you can see most of it here. Let me turn it on. Alright, so there you go. So you see here what it is basically a definition of elite deviance. I put this on the slideshow, so you're not going to have to sit there and read every little bit of it. My gosh. It should be called PDF. Pretty damn stupid. I mean, our PDF files are the most unruly things to deal with. I mean, my gosh, they slow your computer down, they jam up, they freeze up, they stop halfway through. My gosh, it's almost as bad as like the PeopleSoft, like Blackboard does that stuff too. All right, let's go over this stuff. All right, let's pull the light down here a little bit. So in the world of deviant behavior, or social deviance, there's this concept of extreme deviance and elite deviance, and we're going to use Hitler and the Nazi regime and all the people that were along with it. And I'll tell you right now, again, and we've mentioned this before, to blame just this person is the most absurd. I mean, again, the only thing more absurd than just blaming Hitler for everything is saying he was possessed by a demon. You got some proof? Anybody who has a childhood like that, I'm surprised they wouldn't kill somebody. I mean, my gosh. You know, I mean, the social psychology and psychology books are filled with examples of people who had these types of lives that go on to kill other people, or kill themselves, or whatever it is, some kind of damage. Normally, you don't, if you're abused and pushed around and made to essentially be homeless, and think of yourself with low self-esteem, bad things usually happen. Okay, that's usually not a good story. Okay, even if you go for 20, 30 years and you're fine, something triggers it and you snap and you walk into a subway and start shooting people. I mean, that's it. I mean, look, that guy Cho at Virginia Tech, how come he didn't do that 2 years before? Something pushed him to it. Not just a ticking time bomb with the fuse going off. And I would say just general advice to people, before you say something mean to somebody, think twice. Seriously. Because you don't know where they're at mentally. They might have just lost their job and they're ready just to jump down you. They're ready to stomp you to death. Okay? Either that or avoid going to San Francisco Giant games. And wearing Dodger shirts or whatever the hell it is. Wasn't there an incident like that in Philadelphia? Where somebody got beat up with a Rangers uniform or something like that? Yeah, what in the world is going on? These are people who do this are usually people who are abused or alcoholics.
European soccer here.
Right. Yeah. There's no comparison. Argentina's the place where it's real bad right now. They jump. They throw flares and jump. I've seen people come on the field and kick somebody in the face and stuff and all kinds of things like that. So it's insane. Yeah, and it turns into riots and gangs. Like if you're from two rival teams, gangs will meet. They used to do it inside the stadium until they stopped it. Now they meet outside the stadium and battle, and sometimes they don't care who wins the game. So, anyway, it reminds me, it's like old tribal warfare, like between the Angles and the Saxons or something like that. It's like, come on with this stuff. It's like in England, these kingdoms used to all fight each other. Anyway, so extreme deviance is behavior, beliefs, or physical traits that are serious enough that it casts violators outside of conventional society. Things like mass murder, or even like intense racism to the point where somebody wants to kill somebody, or intense sexism, or whatever it is, or rape, or child molestation, or bestiality, right? Like Catherine the Great, or Caligula. I think one of the queens of England actually had sex with her horse or something. Pretty guilty. I mean, you guys laugh at this stuff. This is not. I mean, it's funny because that most people wouldn't do that, but I don't. You know, that's not funny that somebody that's running a country is having sex with a horse. I mean, that's really... That makes me call into question human behavior on every single level. That what are humans about if this is what they do? What good is having thumbs and standing upright if this is what you do with that? So you can develop a harness so you can have sex with your horse? That's why we evolved with thumbs? I mean, my gosh, you know? It'd be better if we didn't have thumbs, okay? Or only had 3 fingers or something. You don't see 3-toed sloths doing this kind of stuff. You don't even see tigers doing this kind of stuff. Okay, sharks, none of it. You know, you can sit there and call a great white shark Jaws, but I'll tell you right now, they're not going to try and hump a whale or something like that. Although they might, you never know. Or a person. Reactions by conventional societies can range from stigmatization to social exclusion. told people not to do it in the middle of class. I told you guys that stuff before. Exclusion depending on the severity of the violation. When a violation becomes unacceptable to a wider range of audiences, it elicits strong negative reactions. However, different audiences induce different definitions of what is acceptable or deviant. So this is relative. Like, for example, there are tribes in this world that still engage in a form of cannibalism. That's absolutely unacceptable in our context. That is a form of extreme deviance. There's people who put crazy plates in their ears and their lips and put things around their neck and then tattoo their entire body, or they even put these, they're not tattoos, they're scars. They pull up the skin. Some societies cut out women's female parts. It's called female circumcision because they think women are dangerous. Other societies eat dogs, and we don't. I mean, you know, for the longest time, Europeans thought cats were evil until the plague started killing everybody, and then they realized the people who had cats didn't die from the plague. Like, this cat's magical. Anyway, just don't pet it backwards. However, different audiences, and again, so this relative part, hence a key point is that once a collective has stigmatized the violator, he or she will enter a subculture due to that attached stigma. Therefore, his or her beliefs become the normative idea since individuals. So one of the things they're saying is when you have a ruler like Hitler in office, or Catherine the Great, or one of these people that is doing something that in other circumstances or by the judgment of other cultures would be deviant, if they're doing it, it's not deviant. Or at least at that moment, it's not. Now, is it still deviant? Yeah, probably. But remember, we talked about that idea. Is there anything that is essentially deviant, meaning at any time when this act is committed that is deviant? Remember, we used the example of child abuse or child rape. So you're telling me that throughout the entire history of human existence on this planet, there's never been a society that defined sex between adults and children to be okay? Go look at Greece. Go talk to people in Thailand right now. Okay, look at. I remember I told you this in the 1890s. The age of consent in New York City was 10 years old, and it didn't mean 10-year-olds having sex with 10-year-olds.
Wait, 1890 you said?
Yeah, late 1800s, not the 1990s. So anyway, and there's still places in the South where it's legal for 14-year-olds to marry if they have parental consent. Okay, so even things that we might, or killing people, right? Hey, someone breaks in your home, they're trying to kill you. It is absolutely acceptable in the minds of many people, including the law, to kill that person. Okay, you just don't show that you had fun doing it, because then you're really in trouble, right? And probably leading yourself down to a bad road. Anyway. Since individuals who participate in extreme deviance seek like-minded people, they create subcultures that reinforce their deviant identity. Was that Hitler? He created a subculture where people around him viewed things at almost the same way, if not more intensely. There were people in the Nazi regime who maybe didn't put Hitler to shame, but were right there. The hatred, the rage, the anti-Semitism. Goring was one of them. That's for no doubt about it. Himmler too. Heydrich, all these people. He had plenty of people that not only were not upset that they had to do this stuff, but did it with glee. Okay, turning people into soap and all kinds of stuff like that. Okay, seriously. Elite deviance, on the other hand, refers to deviance conduct under the guise, direction, or force of powerful individuals and or institutions, organizations. For example, the behavior of Richard Nixon during Watergate, or worse, the behavior of Stalin and Hitler, using the power of the state to magnify their deviance. Right? Jim Jones only got 900 people to kill themselves or murder them, whatever way you want to put it. Bernie Madoff only robbed a certain amount of people. Okay, he didn't rob the government. These people used the government to magnify the damage they were doing, partly because they thought they were doing what was right or correct for their society. Okay, out of vengeance or making things balanced or whatever it is. Public fear as well is used by these either to get people to not attack the government or to get people to act in a way in which they normally wouldn't act. You remember the economic conditions that existed at the time, and then the fire in the Reichstag that was blamed on communists, and there was a lot of chaos in the democratic system as well. And the instruments of external war and internal police suppression and persecution to carry out their wildest dreams of revenge against an unjust, dangerous world. The the way they define it as that such. This was done in the name of many ideologies and social pathologies, nationalism, certainly the sense of national pride. Hitler and the Germans both used this as sort of to justify their actions, that look, we're a better culture than everybody else. We'll make things right. Either submit or be wiped out. Germans at this time were, I think, partly because of what happened during World War I, but just in general, Germans are not exactly, at least in the past, have not been humble about their culture. They have from the beginning. And the British do this too, and America does this too to an extent. You hear this to this day of a nation state saying, we know what's best for the world. The white settlers thought they knew what was best for Native Americans, didn't they? Do you think white settlers thought that their culture was equal to or inferior to Native American culture or better than? By a mile. It wasn't even close. We're Christian, civilized. We don't run around with paint all over our face, around a fire, smoking weed, and doing whatever else, and we can handle our liquor. Okay? And what do you mean you don't know nothing about private property? That to white settlers was like, what? Like, what do you mean you don't care about Jesus? We're going to make you care about Jesus. Okay? We're going to beat you until you love the Prince of Peace. Okay? Anyway, I love the fact that Jesus actively spoke against violence, and talked about tolerance and things. Anyway, Nazism as well, which is the National Socialism. Communism and socialism were used as well to use as far as using the mechanisms of the state, but also in general to justify revolutions and wars. Certainly it was used by people like Mao and Lenin and Stalin. Anti-socialism too, these anti-ideologies that, hey, we need to do this because we need to get rid of these people. Or anti-communism, or anti-capitalism, which socialists were. Or anarchists were that way too. Anarchy is another one, I didn't put it up here, but racism and eugenics, anti-Semitism, colonialism, and imperialism are a form of this elite deviance, certainly extreme forms. And overall messianic zeal and how these people view themselves in the world history. When you combine extreme deviance with elite deviance, you end up with the concept of extreme elite deviance, which in the mind of many threatens the very existence of the human race and has in the past spelled the death of many people and many nations as well. You ask Ukraine what happens when you run up against one of these lunatics. Your country doesn't exist for 60 years, basically. And the Ukrainians, the problem with the Ukrainian-Russian thing is Ukrainians are as proud of their culture as Russians are, and they also feel that the Russians have been bullying them for God knows how many years, 500 years, if you want to go back to it. And Ukraine is not in the mood to listen to Russia about anything. And about a year and a half ago, it came to a head because the Russians threatened to cut off all oil and gas to the Ukraine. And I told you last time that the Russian intelligence service tried to kill one of the Ukrainian presidential candidates who was too friendly with the West. Yeah, they poisoned him. And on some levels they sort of denied it, but on some levels they didn't. Because they wanted people to know in other places like Belarus and Moldova that we'll come get you. It's not the Soviet Union anymore, but we'll come get you. Look at what the Russians did in Chechnya. That wasn't exactly pretty. Along with this, though, is this idea of narcissistic personality disorder, racism, and nationalism, and the Nazi model that many times social conditions legitimize dangerous aspects of individual personalities, like societies that worship harsh dictators, like North Korea. Encourage all members of society. This encourages all members of society to act aggressively and harsh, either to fit in or to fight against the prevailing culture. So either to not stand out or just because you believe in it. In Germany after World War I, the public was demoralized, but with wounded pride, meaning that they believed that the shame in their culture came from outside Germany and that Germans in Germany were still destined for greatness. I think I spelled that wrong. I said destined. Anyway, I'll fix that. Along with the narcissistic view of the superiority of German culture and institutions was the general idea that non-European and non-white, and more specifically, when Hitler got into power, non-Aryan people were mongrels that were not truly human, and therefore it was Germany's duty to humanity to wipe them out and establish a 1,000-year right to create a master race that would hold power over all the world and its history. Hitler had plans to invade the United States. He actually had... They were working on rocket packs that you put on... They actually made a movie out of this called The Rocketeer, Hitler actually had cartoons that were like these films of what would happen in the future of Nazi soldiers with rocket packs on their back flying over the Atlantic Ocean and landing in the United States. I assure you, if Hitler would have taken over the world, do you think he would have treated Africa, Asia, and Latin America very well? I don't think so, right? Okay. I mean, it would have been billions of people dead. There's no doubt about it. Okay. And also, it doesn't surprise me since he was a narcissist. Hitler had a lot of suicidal aspects to him. It wasn't just homicide; it was suicide. So he was somebody who looked at violence as a way to solve problems. One of the things he said that if the party was going to collapse, maybe he was going to go to Danzig and kill himself if they came for him. And remember as well, he held a gun to his head when they were coming to arrest him for the beer hall putsch. So anyway, and then in the end, he ended up killing himself. This is in many ways how those suffering from severe forms of narcissism talk about themselves, and this frame of thought was supported by German nationalism and racism, which allowed for public expression of what many times would be considered to be deviant thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. This in turn created a feedback loop based on a theory of social contagion that suggests that ideas supported by institutions and individuals will spread rapidly and be internalized by large segments of the population. This was occurring all over Europe in various degrees and levels of intensity. Were the German people being infected with the ideas of Nazism and Hitler's charismatic speaking style and his expressing these popular rage? Was this stuff spreading through Germany? It was also spreading through Europe, wasn't it, too? And also the sense of war and foreboding, I think, was spreading through Europe as well. And thoughts and ideas, just like fashion, can spread, just like that. And with the additional element of fear of being arrested if you weren't a Nazi was enough to make even the most timid people who really didn't believe in Nazism at least say they did out in public. What are the characteristics of narcissistic personality disorder? This is according to the DSM-4 TR, which is the revision. List 9 characteristics that are used in the diagnosis whether or not someone has narcissistic personality disorder. The patient must display 5 or more of these characteristics, so I guess it's like a movie rating. Which I would say, look, if you display 2 of these characteristics, one of them is enough. Like this one. You're not going to have a lot of friends if you think you're so damn important. You interrupt people while they're talking, all this, treat people like dirt, not call them on the phone, forget people's birthdays. You do that kind of stuff, you're not going to have a lot of friends. Okay? If you're wealthy, people will pretend to be your friend, but then they'll talk crap about you behind your back like Donald Trump. I don't really think he has a lot of... Do you really think he has friends? Like true friends? Here's another thing. Do you think Donald Trump wants a lot of friends? So he can tell his secrets too, and then he can go tell it to the news media? Right? Poor guy. His daughter, on the other hand, probably has friends lined out the door. Most of them wanting something besides friendship. Anyway, display 5 or more characteristics before they are considered to be impaired by the condition, and the more characteristics the patient displays, the more acute the disorder. Jim Jones suffered from this. Okay, you get accused, maybe Richard Nixon, a lot of our presidents are this way. They've actually found out that people who are narcissists make good liars, and people who are narcissists and are good liars are good leaders, that they get into office. But the more adept you are at lying, the better you are as like somebody who can motivate people. Because if you think about it, inspiring people to things that don't exist, isn't that a form of like fiction? I mean, you're not making people believe a lie, but you're saying, imagine Germany is blah, 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 blah. Right? You're trying to implant in other people ideas that don't exist as reality yet. So there's this fiction into reality that's a power for the narcissist. That came out of my mind. Those concentration camps came out of Hitler and Himmler's and all these people's mind. Right? They were doing it sloppily when they first started. They would line people up in a pit. They call it sardining. They'd line people up 3 or 4 on top of each other while they were still living and just take machine gun fire and just spray them. And a lot of people survived. They had to crawl through the 3 or 4 layers of bodies to get out of the pit with blood all over them and everything. And then they figured out they enlisted the help of German engineers and scientists, and they said, there's got to be a better way to do this. So they figured out the thing about the gas chambers, and then they created a bunch of crematoriums, which were designed specifically to burn human beings. Okay? They said that the smell near Auschwitz and Dachau and Buchenwald was unbelievable, that you never smelled anything like they were killing bodies, they were killing people, they were burning bodies. They were actually supposedly using the people's fat and stuff to make soap and all kinds of things like that. And they'd shave their head off, keep their hair, they kept their glasses. There's actually, in the Holocaust Museum, they have all these pictures of the family pictures that they took from, if you're interested, I'm telling you, go down to the Holocaust. I think is there a branch of it in New York? I know the one in Washington is this way. I'm pretty sure there's some memorials to the Holocaust in New York. So anyway. So here are the characteristics, though. So here's the first one. A pervasive pattern of grandiosity and fantasy or behavior, need for admiration and lack of empathy, beginning by early adulthood and present in a variety of contexts, is indicated by 5 or more of the following. So, did Hitler have this issue? This is the overall condition. So, was he suffering from this? Here's the other. So this is actually the full-on description of what narcissistic personality. These are the 9. Yeah, these are the 9 characteristics. So the first one is, has a grandiose sense of self-importance, exaggerate achievements and talents, expect to be recognized as superior without commensurate achievements. Is that Hitler? Didn't he think he was a better artist than people wanted to give him credit for? And he had all these issues with his childhood, and clearly he saw himself, or at least the Aryan part of himself, as superior. Is preoccupied with fantasies of unlimited success, power, brilliance, beauty, or ideal love. Is that partly Hitler? You could say he was suffering from a little bit of that. We don't know completely, but certainly. He certainly didn't like the way he looked. So, believes that he or she is special and unique and can only be understood by or should associate with other special or high-status people. Hitler? You starting to see here? Requires excessive admiration. Was that Hitler? I don't know about that one, though. You got to ask yourself, was he engaging in this propaganda just to manipulate people, or because he actually wanted attention? I think you could make either argument. Let's see. Has a sense. So fifth one, has a sense of entitlement, unreasonable expectations of especially favorable treatment, or automatic compliance with his or her expectations. Was Hitler a demanding person? Didn't like people to disagree with him? Okay. And again, I'm sure some of you are sitting here going, man, that sounds like my boss. You know, or that sounds like a bully in high school. These people share these characteristics. I'm telling you, a lot of social psychologists, and a lot of psychologists would tell you, there is nothing more dangerous than somebody suffering from severe narcissistic personality disorder, because they're willing to do anything. Their lack of social empathy or concern for other people's feelings and categorizing people as human and non-human makes them capable of anything. Anything. Rape, murder, it doesn't matter. Burning people's houses down. I mean, these are people who, they'll go, a narcissist is so crazy, they'll walk into a police station and start shooting people. They don't care. I would say you take Timothy McVeigh, was probably suffering from some form of narcissistic personality disorder. Now, he tried to say that he did that to get back at the people who did the Waco thing, and then he said that he also said, before they killed him, they executed him, it took like 2-3 weeks. Shouldn't do stuff in Oklahoma and Texas, trust me. What he said was, if he hadn't known there were kids in the building, he wouldn't have done it. And they actually tried, I think at one point, they were going to try and plead insanity, but I don't think that was going to work. So, anyway. Is interpersonally exploitative, takes advantage of others to achieve his or her own ends. Did he do that with Poland and the chancellors and all that other stuff? Lacks empathy, is unwilling to recognize or identify with the feelings and needs of others. I mean, that's pretty clear. That's probably one of his main things, right? That's what we call lack of social empathy. Is often envious of others or believes others to be envious of him or her. Is that Hitler? Shows arrogant, haughty behaviors or attitudes. So, does he suffer from all 9 of these? Here's the other problem as well. Maybe he didn't suffer from all 9 of these at every single point in his life, but by the time 1939 rolled around, when he was the Fuhrer and he'd been in office for 6 years, and everybody was telling him, "Oh my gosh, look what he did! He built the Autobahn, and he created Volkswagen, and he rearmed Germany, and he gave us our pride back, and he took Austria, and he took the Czech Republic, and hey, Poland, you're next." At that point in time, do you think there were external factors that were propping up Hitler's personality and his feeling? Did he have justification to think he was special? And again, I want to be clear about this. I'm not comparing Michael Jordan to Hitler. But when you're Michael Jordan, is there a reason for you to be a little bit arrogant? You're the greatest basketball player on the face of the earth. Almost everybody says you are. Or if you're Eric Clapton or something like that, might you think you're the greatest guitar player on the earth? You have reason to believe this. Tiger Woods, he had reason to believe he was better than other people, at least one thing, right? Obviously not at trying to hide his infidelity, but anyway. Supposedly, Tiger, he was really cheap, and one of the dates, or one of the hookups, they weren't dates, he never took them out in public because he was married, wanted food, so he went and got a 6-inch Subway. And it was probably that $5 sub, so he paid $2. Probably just got a mayonnaise on bread and some lettuce or something like that. There you go. Now have sex with me. Anyway. And you actually, during his apology, he actually said, he said this, I don't think he's a severe narcissistic personality disorder. What he said was, he had worked very hard in college, and they used to actually call him Urkel, which is not a compliment, okay, when he went to Stanford. And he spent a lot of time, especially when his dad was still alive, focusing on golf, and then he was married relatively early in his life. And he said during his apology, I felt that I was entitled to take advantage of the temptations in front of me. That's what he said. And you got to hand it to him. Most narcissists will dare to admit that. Elliot Spitzer didn't admit that, did he? Did he admit to anything, really? No. He didn't really say, I'm a narcissist, I need help. You know, at least Tiger, we've got rehab. We don't know what exactly, steroids, cocaine, or the drugs, or the sex, whatever he was doing. Okay, he looks like he's on coke to me, or something. He certainly looks like he was on steroids at one point. Did you see his arms?
The only thing he apologized for was getting caught.
Yeah, that's essentially it. You sit there and think, and on top of that, if you watch that press conference, the one he's sitting there reading it sort of verbatim, and I'm just going through the motions. And then when he gets to the part where he tells the press to leave his wife and kids alone, he stands his head up and it's like, leave my kids alone, like that. Like, it was like, that was the reason for the press conference, wasn't it? That and to save the Nike crap. Because I'm trying to think of, he lost a lot of sponsors through that.
He lost Gatorade and Gillette.
Didn't A-Rod lose a bunch of sponsors? Didn't somebody else, or Ryan Braun, or one of those people got busted for steroids? When you get, or Michael Phelps, I don't know if he lost any sponsorship, but when you get out in the press like that, part of the reason why these celebrities like Charlie Sheen will go out and apologize, and Charlie never apologized, he just made it worse. You want to talk about narcissists? Claim he's got tiger's blood. I'm on a drug, it's called Charlie Sheen, you can't get it in stores. You know? At one point they were like, how much money do you want from the company? He's like, tons. He's like, they're going to bring in a scale, put a little more on there. And during the interview he was drinking a glass with red liquid in it with no ice in it. And then smoking a cigarette that kept going out. And let me ask you something. Do you think grown men that are 47 years old sit around drinking high C or fruit punch with no ice in it? Come on. And Diane Sawyer didn't once go, what's in the glass, Charlie? Because he probably would have been here. Take it. Probably meth mixed with vodka and with tomato juice or something like that. Like Andre Agassi tried to claim he drank meth in a soda can when he really put it right up his nose. So anyway. But back to this idea, so extreme elite deviance many times leads to things, or is related to things like total war, the final solution. So it says here, total war was a concept that existed for some time, perhaps as far back as the Mongols. The Mongols used to just tear villages down. We think of biological warfare as being something new. You know what they used to do when they siege a city? They'd take feces and dead animals and corpses, especially if they were infected with smallpox or plague, and fling them over the walls of the castle. And eventually the disease would just run rampant. You didn't need to fire an arrow. You could save all your arrows and whatever weapons and just go in and clean the mess up. The problem is people didn't understand disease transmission. So they would, after all the people were dead, they'd walk into the city and then they would get sick. They were idiots. But hey, they deserved it. I mean, that's the kind of stuff you're going to do. That's some serious stuff. So anyway, but again, the main idea is to attack your enemy without limits. Civilians, children, using rape, bombing cities and hospitals, sowing revolution in other countries, sabotage, assassination, acts of terror. Boy, this sounds familiar. This is like the CIA's handbook, except for the rape thing, at least that I know of. I'm sure some CIA agents raped somebody. Genocide and complete annihilation. Blitzkrieg was only in this vein with regards to its intensive bombing and undeclared nature of war, but Blitzkrieg was a limited war, and it was done on purpose. Blitzkrieg was limited for a reason. Hitler said, look, you can't It's better just to come in, take over, neutralize the population, de-arm the military. You don't lose soldiers. You don't lose troops. Man, it looks like a bloodless conflict. You look like a genius when you do that. You want to go in, and plus, here's the other thing, especially in countries where he was trying to curry favor with some of the elements in the society to get them to join the Nazi regime. When you start bombing civilians and children, now you're not the liberator, now you're the invader. That's one of the reasons why the United States at least attempted, the Air Force attempted not to hit civilian targets in Iraq. They did sort of a bad job of it, to some extent. But they did try to limit that because they didn't want the Iraqi people to hate them. And I'll tell you right now, that was the mistake Al-Qaeda in Iraq made. They used total war techniques. They would bomb police stations and marketplaces and not attack American troops directly. And the Sunnis and the Shiites that were in Iraq said, hey, look, yeah, we don't like the U.S. military, but you're way worse, so get out. And a lot of them were foreign fighters from Jordan and Saudi Arabia and Pakistan and stuff like that. And a lot of people want to give credit to the surge, and it did play a role in quelling Iraq, but it was the Sunni awakening that stopped the nonsense. It really was. They came to the decision, hey, this is our country, and we're tired of war, and we're tired of dictators, and we're tired of murderers, and we're not going to let this happen no more. We'll see how long it lasts. If I was to put a list of countries that was at risk to have a narcissistic person take over their society by election, it would be Iraq would be near the top of the list. There's no doubt in my mind. Those people are angry. They've been through horrible things. And I don't mean now, but think about some 5- and 6-year-old child who sat there and watched this 10-year war. From the ages of 5 to 16, there's been nothing but war in their life. Tell me how well adjusted that child's going to be. Not going to be good. Okay? Anyway. Blitzkrieg was limited war, and then the Einsatzgruppen would come on behind. This is essentially the murder squads. They were SS soldiers. Many of them were actually Waffen-SS. Would come in behind the German army and use total war tactics by killing undesirables. They'd line up civilians. Sometimes, if somebody would come in and take a shot at one of the German soldiers, a sniper, they'd just shoot the whole village. But you, the tell us, or you die. Okay? Eventually, Hitler implemented what became known as the final solution, which on Monday we'll watch a video on this and we'll talk more about the elements of it, for the Jewish problem, as he called it. But also the issue with the Soviet Marxism and the general non-Aryan races like the Slavs, and bring everyone else under German control and domination. There's a reason why Hitler did not wipe out France. He saw those people, I know it's strange because France and Germany have this relationship, the same with Britain, he saw those people as Aryans. And the French actually, a fair amount of the French proved him right by turning in who? Who did some of the French turn in? Yep. They said, here, take them. Go. Just don't kill us. Same with the Dutch. Same with the Belgians. Same with the Danes, whatever you want to call it. I mean, throughout Europe. Okay? And remember I told you last time, Stalin was greeted as a liberator by many Jews in Eastern Europe, and then as soon as the war was over, he started killing them. And sending them off to Siberia and all kinds of stuff like that. So Jewish people have been through a lot in Europe. No doubt. These are the acts of extreme elite deviance, and the damage is clear. 65 to 75 million dead in World War II, many of them civilians. I would say, I don't know, maybe if you know about this, Jeff, I think most casualties in World War II civilians. Because World War I, more soldiers died in World War I. More French soldiers died in World War I than World War II, but they didn't battle that much with the Germans. They sort of gave in. So, I mean, you got battles where 500,000 soldiers died.
Yeah, it's just hard to estimate as far as casualties are concerned with like civilian casualties, because A, they're never really accounted for, so nobody really takes that into consideration. It's just like a grim thing. Nobody's gonna, no soldier will admit that.
Well, also like, for example, in Iraq, the estimates range from 20,000 Iraqi civilians to 200,000. I've heard as high as 1 million. And we don't know. And one of the other issues in World War II is a lot of people died of starvation and disease and depression and by committing suicide and a whole host of other stuff. So we don't really know, and obviously the death camps and stuff like that. But you got to think that a lot of these are civilians here. Okay, a lot of them, especially in the Soviet front, 20 to 25 million died. Okay, and I don't think Western Europe in the West has ever given the Russians the due that they deserve for taking the brunt of the nonsense. Because, look, as bad as the Western Front was, it was a cakewalk compared to what took place on the Eastern frontier. I'm telling you right now. Okay, the only thing that came close to it is our battles with the Japanese in the Pacific. That was horrendous. Those people would never give up. I mean, they'd be half dead and still be shooting their weapons. I mean, it was crazy. You'd burn them with flamethrowers. They'd still come out shooting while they were on fire. So anyway, again here, 12 million people in general, with 6 million Jewish people killed in concentration camps, death camps, and impromptu execution squads all over Europe. Most of Europe and many parts of the world was in tatters. Cities were destroyed. Infrastructure was destroyed. Economies were destroyed. So this is very serious stuff. Okay, this isn't some little thing where Scott Peterson killed his wife. Not that I'm not trying to downplay that, but if you look at it, that is not a form of elite deviance, and you can even make him, although it is kind of extreme, it only impacted those people who were directly involved. Many major cities were reduced to nothing but rubble: Stalingrad, Berlin, Warsaw, Tokyo. Who razed Tokyo almost to the ground? Who was that? Yeah, the U.S. Air Force did that. They firebombed Tokyo because most of the buildings were made out of wood. They actually killed more, I believe, or at least nearly the same amount in the firebombing of Tokyo that they did with the 2 atomic bombs. Roughly one. It was like, I want to say 200,000 people died in Tokyo.
I heard close to 4.
Yeah, I mean, that's outrageous, you know. And that was just conventional incendiary bombs. When they hit, they burst into flames.
That's how we got here.
Yeah. Yeah, and to give you an idea about the U.S. military, what it's done, we dropped more bombs on Vietnam than we did on Germany in World War II. So, anyway, and we still lost the war. Due to the direct actions of elites that committed acts of extreme deviance, or in by the actions of those or in by the actions of those that stopped them, you know, even both the act of the war itself by the Nazis, but also the act of the Allies coming in to destroy the Nazi war-making machine. Again, I told you, the Allies and the British and the Americans are the ones who decided, and you can see how stupid this strategy was. They didn't understand what grip Hitler had on the country, and they thought if they bombed civilian targets, that the civilians would pressure the government to stop the war. They didn't realize that the Germans were more afraid of Hitler than they were of the Allies. And I'll tell you right now, during the later stages of the war, German soldiers, a lot of them just threw up their hands and said, we go with you. Don't send us to the Russians. They love to surrender to Americans. Okay. That's because we gave them Hershey bars. Anyway, has the world learned its lesson, though? And what can we take away from our study of Hitler for the 21st century? Are the weaknesses in institutions still present, and can they be taken over by narcissists again? I would say the way our democracy is designed right now, who else is going to run for president except for a narcissist? I mean, seriously. I know you guys love Obama and all that stuff, so I'm going to stay away from attacking him, but come on. Look at Nixon. Do you think, hey, was Clinton a bit of a narcissist? Let's be honest here. Okay. Right? You could say Reagan was a narcissist, and he was a Hollywood actor. Bush Sr., he was mad that the country kicked him out. I've heard that he's never gotten over that election defeat. He's mad at the country. He thinks like America abandoned him. I'm sure Al Gore's not in a good mood either. I mean, you got elections stolen from you by the Supreme Court. I don't think that's something you get over very easily. But he did win a Nobel Prize, so it all turned out good for Al, and he grew a beard and went to Amsterdam and did, I guess, whatever the hell you do in Amsterdam. So anyway, all right, everybody, I'll see you next week. The slideshows and everything are up there. I think that was the last slide. Yes. We will talk more about some of these issues as well. We'll also get into things like Hitler's use of drugs and his health. He suffered from very intense stomach pains and all kinds of stuff. He was on methamphetamines as well as cocaine and also sedatives to help him sleep.